the first place you should go are the people who've actually purchased your product. So my favorite question to do is to ask people, how would you describe this product to a friend or to a family member or whoever the relevant person would be? So use your customers, engage with them as a way to figure out the best way to resonate with future customers.
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Welcome back to another episode. With us today is the founder and CEO of Experiment Zone, AJ Davis. They're a conversion rate optimization specialist. As CEO and founder of Experiment Zone, they help online businesses grow their sales by improving their website and bringing data to life. AJ, so excited to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm doing great today. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So we always like to ask about our entrepreneurial journey. What were you doing before that brought you into what you're doing today?
I've been doing this for a little while now. We just passed our 8-year mark, which is very exciting. But before that, I had been in a variety of consultancies and agencies, but also in-house at some big tech companies as well. So my journey took me from finance in my early career to really focus on UX research and in-house UX research at Google. And then I worked at an agency for a little while and worked with some really big brands and had a great time doing it and thought this is something I can really do on my own in a better way and having a bigger impact.
Wow, that is very cool. So now tell me more about the work that you specialize and focus on right now with conversion rate optimization. Because when a lot of us think marketing, advertising, they think top of funnel, more ads. Why is the conversion rate optimization so important?
Yeah, we're like the perfect pairing for anyone spending money on ads or SEO. Basically, you get people to your website, and then our job is to get those visitors to your site to become customers. So we do a variety of things focused on the user experience of that piece of the journey. What is it like for someone to encounter the brand for the first time in a more direct way with all the pieces and complexity that now your website is presenting to them? So it's no longer this kind of snippy message on an ad where it captures their attention. Now we have to tell the story. We need to give the education and the persuasion. All those elements have to come together to end up closing the deal. So if you picture someone at a physical store, all the ads and stuff, get them into the Target or whatever store you're talking about. And then our job is to design the inside of the store so that people can find what they're looking for and understand where to go to check out and how all those pieces come together.
I love that. And that part of that user experience from actually being on the website, interacting, taking them through the stages of the buyer's journey. It's a little complex because you're trying to balance, need the website to load fast enough where they're still interested with copy that gets to the point, but still needs to create the storytelling element and education piece and then the persuasion. So you're trying to fit all these elements in. How do we find this balance between too short, too long? Are there kind of like tried and true practices that you recommend?
I mean, the answer is you have to test it because it really is context dependent. So we find that there are some best practices, and we'll talk about those today. So I don't want anyone to walk away thinking she's just going to be a consultant and say it depends. But my headline is it really does matter who your audience is. It does matter what your product is. So if you have a really simple product and you have one product, it's a very different journey than if you sell 500 products and they're customizable and very complex. And similarly, if it's like a really niche problem that immediately people can understand how you solve it, perfect. But if you have to help them figure out where to go and what's right for them, there's a lot of hand-holding that goes through that. So it all depends. But at the end of the day, the first starting place everyone needs to do, and most websites have wrong, is that any page somebody lands on, whether it's a homepage, which is kind of what we normally think of as the starting place, but sometimes it's product pages, sometimes it's a dedicated landing page. Any place someone might start needs to be able to answer 3 questions right off the bat. What it is that the site is selling, who it's selling it to, and why that person should buy that product, particularly from this business. That's a lot to answer in a small amount of space, and we need to really get that answer right in order to sell effectively. But first and foremost, most companies aren't even putting that information on those key pages.
That is very helpful information. When it comes to kind of tried and true practices, what about the trends and the changes? Have there been any trends or changes that you've seen in the last 5 to 10 years when it comes to CRO?
That's a great question. I think there are lots of pieces that are always changing. There are things that have been trendy that have turned out to not really be a great idea for conversion. And then there are things that people were a little afraid of, maybe impacting conversion that turned out to actually not matter. So the one that comes to mind for me is A lot of the templates you'll find on Shopify or BigCommerce or these platforms say, hey, put this scrolling banner as your homepage banner. The first thing people see are these sort of things that automatically scroll through. Great, I can put like 5 to 6 different marketing messages and people can click on what interests them. That sounds good in principle, but it turns out people engage even less with that whole banner. Any one of them, they click on them less, they bounce at a higher rate if they're seeing a lot of those things. And so we're often just testing, can we get it right with one? Can we get to one brand message? And then maybe intersperse some of those influential pieces and marketing messages elsewhere on the site. But that's kind of an example that's a very common practice. It's been trendy to have that or to do these video overlays. And at the end of the day, are actually distracting people from the main reason they're there.
Absolutely. And I think that just highlights the importance of testing things out. Something you may think would be a great idea ends up failing, and then something that you didn't think would have an effect actually ends up working better. So it's something you have to test and experiment. Is there a certain length of time that you usually recommend a test or an experiment to say, hey, we're feeling confident in this decision, we should test something different now?
Yeah. We use 3 criteria for deciding if something has gotten what we need out of it. We always let tests run for at least 2 weeks because someone shopping on the weekend might have different intent than someone on a Wednesday morning. And we like to see that full cycle twice. A lot of companies want to test in a day or two, and that's going to bias your results. You don't know how that's going to hold up. We also look for a minimum sample size that we determine ahead of time so we don't let our own biases creep in. Like, oh, it looks like it's winning, but we didn't actually get enough data. And then we also look for statistical significance that this result is actually going to be different than this one in most likelihood and the highest likelihood. So those are kind of the 3 things that we're looking for. And the combination of 3 things give us confidence to turn off a test. The TLDR, make sure you let it run for at least 2 weeks and make sure that you have a significant sample size.
Yeah, I was kind of curious as far as the things can be seasonal or yearly, but even that shorter cycle of the 2 weeks, I feel like is a good time frame because again, you get the Wednesday morning, the Saturday, kind of gives you that bigger picture look. But speaking about data as a whole, we can learn a lot from our data, but some people, I just don't feel like they don't know how to utilize it or they don't know how to interpret it. So what's your approach to making sense of data? What data do you use? What's just fluff data? What do you focus on?
I find that there's 2 extremes of people that show up. I've met many people who just close the door on the data, know it's there, but don't really know what to do with it, so don't really look at it. And on the other side, I know people who will have their Google Analytics live streaming. How many people are on their site right now? How many people are ordering? And really reactive to what's happening in this moment. And I try to sit in the middle of that. As a UX researcher, my passion and my training has led me to start with a question first. So before I even look at the data, I'm trying to figure out what it is that I need to learn about. And in order to know what the question should be, I should know what the goal is. So if the goal is, hey, we should figure out how do we get more people to convert on mobile devices, something I might wonder about is where are people on mobile devices getting stuck? Okay, that gives me some clear data points of what to look for. Where are they coming in? What pages? What's the conversion rate from this page to this page for this group? And then what's the overall conversion to order? So that gives me a really clear focus. I can predefine the 5 to 10 data points I might need to examine and to go answer that question. I think the risk that we have is if we just look at this big sea of data and hope that something interesting pops out to us and take action on it. That can end up being pretty distracting or maybe taking us away from our primary goal.
Absolutely. And I think the data speaks for itself, but there's other things that can't be spoken through data, like the user experience or the feeling or the thoughts that they have about a company, or even those sticking points that you mentioned, sometimes called friction within the buyer's journey, where they get stuck or they hit an obstacle. Either the form is too long or the button isn't working right, or just takes them through this process that they didn't expect and they get stuck. They lose confidence. What are some ways that you're trying to reduce the friction within the buyer's journey?
We're creating these hypotheses of things that might do better than something else based on what problems we think there are. And sometimes we get stuck and we don't really know what's driving the data that we're seeing, and we're not getting traction on these changes we think should be working. And that's where that qualitative data can be really helpful. So to your point, sometimes we actually need to figure out how to get into our customers' heads. And the best way to do it is actually to talk to them. So we do a lot of qualitative research. There's some really good methods for that where you can observe people, have them think aloud about what they're seeing and observing and where they get stuck. If you get a handful of people to do that, you can start to see themes that come out that then you can address in a follow-up response. But we also do interviews and other things. So it really all depends. It all comes down to what is the goal that we're trying to accomplish, what's the problem, and what is kind of the solution or the hypothesis we need to explore. So at the end of the day, you've got to all bring it back to your business goals and not get distracted by, oh, this one customer said this one thing, let's go fix that. So taking that step back, bringing in the data that matters and setting aside the data that isn't as important right now, but knowing it's available in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. When you mentioned that, it just reminded me of some of the small business owners who will post like their worst review where it's like the worst grilled cheese sandwich I've ever had. And they'll post that publicly or just as a display, like, hey, you know what? This is the worst grilled cheese sandwich. Come on in and try it. Almost as if it's a badge of honor. But these thoughts and feelings about your brand and what people review you about, that's their perception of your business. And that experience that you have through them is going to impact.
Yeah, that made me think of this very common thing that we do. I think anyone listening to this podcast could do themselves. What do I put on my website as my brand message? The first place you should go are the people who've actually purchased your product. So my favorite question to do is to ask people, how would you describe this product to a friend or to a family member or whoever the relevant person would be? And if you get enough of those answers back, you're going to get a much better piece of copy to put on your website than was the team who's really close to this product, who's really passionate about what it's going to solve. The words that you choose aren't going to be the same as your customer, who's going to really boil it down to the basics. So use your customers, engage with them as a way to figure out the best way to resonate with future customers.
That is really smart. I really like that because yes, what they explicitly say will directly affect how people perceive your business and your website. We're just too close to our product to make that clear picture and representation. I was going to ask about the tools and when it comes to finding out about the user experience and using that to improve our conversion rates. Things like AI, heat maps, tracking and cookies. Are any of these tools helpful and relevant to some of the work that you do? And can you tell me more about the tools that you're using?
Yeah, I would say yes to all of them. I think tools kind of is the same way I think of data, where there are lots of options. We have to be really careful not to get distracted by them. But if we know what we're trying to accomplish, we can figure out where to go. So with the example we just talked about, maybe you ask 1,000 customers to describe your business. Now you've got a huge set of qualitative data, and you could go through and label them and try to sort them out, and that could be helpful. But you could also shortcut that by asking AI to do it and seeing how close that gets to kind of boiling that down to what are the 3 to 5 things you're seeing there. So I do think it's worth, working with an expert to construct the questions and the things that you're asking, but you can leverage technologies that are out there to shortcut the analysis or the synthesis of the data. And similarly, some of the other tools out there, like the A/B testing tools and all these things, they come together only if you know what it is that you're trying to accomplish with them. So a lot of companies I work with, I'll say, hey, do you have click tracking available, a heat mapping tool? And 9 out of 10 are like, yeah, I've had that on there since the beginning. And they are kind of proud because, of course, you have to have that on your site. That's what every good e-commerce business does. But I ask them what they've learned from it or what they've done with it. And I think that's often like, I'm not really sure. And that's kind of the same thing where you can have it. It's good to have it. You can look back at data, but unless you have a question that you're trying to answer, it's hard to get value at a lot of these tools.
Right, absolutely. It's one thing to get the information, but do you act upon it and make use of that data after the fact? And have you ever found an instance where maybe they just tried to jump on a piece of data and change something for the sake of changing it, and it ended up hurting the results that they thought would improve? I just feel sometimes it's like we get in too early and feel like I just need to change this when we should really just leave it alone and let things play out.
Yes. Many times. I think the most common scenario that comes to mind that a lot of times companies will say, our site's just old. It looks bad. It's kind of clunky. It's slow. Let's just throw it out and try again. And sometimes if they take the time to try again and compare the two of what was there versus what's the new thing actually is hurting them. They're getting less revenue. Their conversion rate's down. There's something going on that we failed to anticipate in rolling out this new site that looks good, is faster, checks a lot of boxes. And kind of slow that process down. Our best case scenario is to roll out big changes, but test them against each other so that we can pull back and start again if that happens. I have a client who I would shine a light on as making some really strong choices in this way, where they really want to move the way their graphics and their illustrations are done. They have a new brand style, and they also have some new layouts and copy they want to do. And they've just done a really good job of being tenacious at testing those changes. And if they don't work, okay, we'll try again. And they come up with another thing that fits the new brand guidelines, but will serve the customer better than what's there now.
Absolutely. And I think that's a testament to putting something out there, testing things a little bit, and not being afraid to go back and change things. It's not like you have to perfect something over 8 months or 8 years until you finally get it absolutely perfect. It'll never be perfect. But I feel putting it out there, you learn through that experience, through testing, and then changing based on that feedback. It's just invaluable.
And I think that some of our best learnings come from when something doesn't work in the way that we expect. And I think knowing ahead of time what we thought was going to happen, having a hypothesis of how this thing will outperform this thing because of this. Well, if that doesn't hold up, we've learned something really valuable about the customer, about the site experience, about our own knowledge that's there.
Absolutely. Now, for those interested in getting connected with you and learning more about you online, where can people find you?
Our company site is experimentzone.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, AJ Davis. There's probably 100 of us. So Austin, Texas is our location. You can reach out to me via message on LinkedIn. One of the offers I like to make to anyone listening to the podcast is to hit me up for a virtual coffee. At the beginning of my career, as I mentioned, I was in finance and then I moved into UX and technology and kind of moved around a bit. And the reason I even made that change was because I had 100 coffees with 100 different people and I want to just give that back. So hit me up for a virtual coffee, or if you're in Austin, let me know and we can meet in person.
That is wonderful. And we'll have those links available down in the show notes and the description for everybody. Now, AJ, would there be a resource, either podcasts, books, YouTube channels, places where people can find out more about everything that you've learned or specifically conversion rate optimization?
We have a podcast. It's called the Experiment Zone Podcast. I'll make a plug for it. You can come watch us on YouTube. We do some screen share and some live critiques of stores, but we also have an audio version. So check us out, the Experiment Zone Podcast.
Very nice. And then just wanted to ask more about an example of a business that you worked with where after coming in with your special magic, the special sauce, what were some of the results that you were able to get them from the before and after with their business?
Yeah, we have one client in particular that stands out because they were really wanting to resonate with people who would visit the landing page, and they had lots of information. And we did a research project with their sales team and ended up increasing their conversion rate on the page by 120%, just because we boiled it down to the key things that mattered instead of having lots of overwhelming information. So that's one test. But we have other clients where we've been working with them for years and we've helped reshape their business strategy and their pricing and their design and style. So we can really become an integrated part of the team and really help grow the business in the long term.
Absolutely. And I feel a lot of businesses are just leaving money on the table. You're already paying for the visitors to come to your site, or you created the content and it's starting to pick up traction. Why wouldn't you want to get another sale from that? It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, what would it look like to go from a 1% conversion rate to even 1.2%, right? A lot of businesses haven't thought through the math on that, but it can have a huge ROI impact to not have to invest additional right now in marketing to grow your business. And then you can reinvest that and just the whole thing will grow. So pausing or waiting too long on it, investing on that piece of the puzzle makes everyone's job harder on your team. And we're great complements to teams that are focused on getting people to the site.
Absolutely. Now, with everything that you're doing, what are you looking forward to most in 2025? Are you launching any new initiatives, anything exciting coming through? Or are you kind of sticking with the same game plan that's been working for you all these years?
I'm publishing my first book, so I'll give a little plug for that. It's a broader topic than CRO. It's called Usability for the World. And we're planning to publish multiple versions of it, tackling different key problems in the world. This first one is focused on building better cities and communities. So I'll give another plug, which is check us out on usabilityfortheworld.com.
Very exciting. AJ, I wanted to ask more about any other topic or anything we haven't woven into what we're talking about yet to make sure we highlight.
I think we've covered all the things I was expecting to. I think you had a question along the way around other episodes of yours that I've listened to and impact. So I do have an answer to that if you want to wrap up with that question.
Absolutely. So AJ, tell me more about some of the impacts other entrepreneurs or lessons have had for you.
I was just listening to your podcast. An episode you did recently was around the use of improv in business. And that one in particular really resonated with me because I too have done a lot of improv classes, and my story is a little different than the guest you had, but he's using it as a business to teach people about communication. But for me, I started using it just in how comfortable I was. I would not be doing podcasts today if I didn't take improv classes. Just taught me to think on my feet and be scrappy and kind of embrace what ends up coming out of my mouth as I'm talking. So it was really cool to hear about someone who's really specialized in that. And I thought you guys had a really good conversation about that. So if you've missed that episode, definitely go back and listen to it.
I appreciate it. And it was such a great conversation. At the end, we even went through a little exercise for wordplay association, which is really cool. Just thinking on your toes and using those communication skills for other real life applications. I think it's really impactful. AJ, we appreciate you sharing your time and all the tips and tricks and knowledge you've shared with us today. Make sure you go check out the links available down in the show notes and the description, and appreciate all of that you've done for us. Thank you, AJ.
Thanks so much for having me on. It was a good conversation.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.